All right. Hi, everybody. It's 5 o'clock. I think we can get started. So, for those of you who may be watching the stream and don't know me, my name is Shiva Rizvani. I was moderating the previous session, and this session in particular is called Physical Objects. I'm one of the Capstone instructors here at TAM, which means that I had the pleasure of helping out some of the members or the students who are here who are about to present. Before we get started, I want to say hello and welcome our two reviewers. So thank you so much for joining us, Asli Aydin and Ryan Bilyitso. Before we get started, I just want to share some information about them. So Asla is an experienced strategist with 10 plus years of experience in both agency and in-house, helping clients design the future of their business. Asla is currently head of UX strategy at Nuveen in New York City and was previously at Code and Theory. When she's not designing experiences, you can find her at Prospect Park in New York City running, rollerblading, at home puzzling, or reading, or at the, is it the Pit also, is that right? The Pit following her fear. Ryan Bilyitso is a senior design lead at Mount Sinai. He is a designer, musician, and ultra distance athlete. As an interaction service designer with 12 plus years of experience, he has launched 22 plus digital and physical products in the spaces of health, social impact, and mass market consumer electronics. Previously, Ryan worked at Park, Ammunition Group, Frog Design, T4D, which is a lab focused on designs for social good, and Databetes, which is a startup focused on digital health for type 1 diabetics acquired by Dexcom. His most recent work has been focused on improving the patient, provider, researcher experience inside of large health systems. So welcome to you both. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi.
So first up in this group, we have This Is Not a Plastic Bag. So Jiang, you can go ahead and take over.
Let me just share my screen. Okay. I believe it should be showing on your end, right? Okay, awesome. Let me drag this video thing over. Okay, that's good. So hi everyone, my name is Xiang Luo and this is my Capstone project. This is not a plastic bag. So for my project, I made a beautiful biodegradable bag that is backyard composable. So the problem that I'm trying to tackle with my project is, first of all, plastic is causing pollution, as we all know. There are existing products on the market that's trying to solve or like replace plastic, but they often just end up being ugly. Like here I have like a collage of a variety of compostable bags. How despite that they're coming from different brands, you can see that they all kind of share this look of like made up with something that's like a green element or like a plant or like a earth symbol onto it. So to me, with having seen like that kind of traits being repeated over and over on the same type of bag, it's just kind of boring and I feel like it's not really attractive to see. So other than that, a lot of the compostable bags, there are not backyard compostable. So here I have an example of one of the previous bags shown here. This bag that on the bag, it does say like it has this very capitalized bold tag saying it's compostable. But if you were to zoom in and look closely, you will actually notice it's only compostable in industrial facilities only. So what that means is that this bag will only compost within an environment where like the temperature as well as the moist in the air are carefully monitored and controlled. So if you were to put this compostable bag into your backyard composting pile, it's not gonna work. It's just gonna sit there and do nothing, and it will not degrade as you thought it will be. So as some people might be like misled by the compostable sign, or just think those products are compostable within like any environment. Often people would do is that they would just like put these bags into just a regular environment, hoping or thinking it will degrade over time, but in the end it will just end up looking like this picture on the right side. So that is a photo of a biodegradable bag that's been sitting in soil for 3 years straight. And when it was like digged out again, you can see that this bag is covered up all in dirt and something. The general form and the shape of it still remains intact, and there is really no signs of the bag being degrading at all. So as you can see from all the examples that I have given, sometimes the industrially compostable bags can be polluting the environment just as a regular plastic bag does. So how do I deal with that? Like, what is my reaction, or like how am I gonna approach this problem? Well, I came up with making my own bag out of bioplastic, which is shown on the right side. So this bag does not only look better than all the previous green bags that you have seen, it is also going to compost better than a regular industrially compostable bag. So given a worst case scenario, if this bag is put into a landfill or just a regular trash pile, it will still compost at a faster rate than the industrially compostable bags do. So with all of that being said, now you might wonder, like, how did I get here? How did I make this bag, essentially? So let me walk you through the process. So first of all, I tested out the materials. I was browsing online, looking at different recipes, and also trying to test out my own ideas. But the whole process of making bioplastic just turned out to be very challenging. So I was having a little bit of trouble doing that, but luckily later on I met this person named Fiona Bell. She is a graduate student at Alice and also a member of the Living Matter Lab here, like at Alice. And with her help, I eventually made a bioplastic sheet out of all natural materials shown on the right side. So that is agar, which is extracted from seaweed, and that's water and glycerin. So the sheet is made up of all natural materials and ingredients. So moving on, after I have the sheet, I moved on to making the back shape in Illustrator, which is shown at the bottom right, bottom left part. So it's just a very basic handle back shape. And I also found some flower petal pictures online, and then I Photoshop them to use them as prints or designs onto the bag later on. So the next step is just to test out to see if the digital designs that I made previously will transfer onto the actual material itself. Well, I did two tests for that. First, I did a laser cut etching test on the left side, which is basically using a laser cutter, but instead of cutting things out, I was using the etching setting to etch out the design onto the surface of the bio plastic sheet. And on the right side, I did a color printing test, and that was just me using the same sheet that I tested, but also switched to a color printer to see if the prints were shown on the plastic bioplastic sheet. So those two tests end up looking great. And the next step, I just laser cut it out the shape. And finally, it was the process of joining the shapes together. I just took two identical shapes that I cut it out and then sealed it on the edge using heat. So with all the efforts and process that I devoted onto this project, let me present to you. This is not a plastic bag, but in three different kinds of designs. So two of them are being this floral kind of spring-like feeling to it, and then the other one is just text-based design, which in my opinion, they looks far more better than the previous green bags that you have seen. So in the end, I would like to give my special thanks to all the people that have helped me during the process of making my capstone project. My mentor, Mirella Alistair, she is the director of the Living Matter Lab in Atlas. And then it's my peer, Fiona Bell. She is the fellow member of Mirella's lab. And then it's my aesthetic teacher, Jean Husbach. And last but not least, Shiva Rasvani, my capstone project professor. So thanks a lot to them. I would not have made this project without their kind help. And I really appreciate that. And lastly, it just comes to the end of my project. And thank you very much for listening. Is there any questions or comments?
Nice work, Xiong. Thank you so much. So we have a limited amount of time for questions, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Ryan or Asa? Yeah, Asa, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question. First of all, great project. I really loved it. And I
Thank you.
love how you explained the problem and the problem with the current products out there, and then introduce your solution, which was, a great presentation, and I loved your end product. I have a question around how did you come up with the material? How did you decide it was more eco-friendly than the other ones, and how much more eco-friendly is it? Like, as a result of this, how much more are we being environmentally friendly? Have you been able to look into those results?
Like, are you talking about like maybe specific data, or like of how much faster would the bag that I made would be composting compared to the other products?
Yeah, how much faster?
I don't have a specific answer to that because like I said, I made this material based on like Fiona, the lab fellows help.
Yeah.
So they have more data than I do,
Got it.
but I believe the bio plastic sheet that we made will probably compost in a less strictly environment than the commercial or the industrially compostable bags do. So yeah, like the general requirement for the environment that the bags need to be composting will be less strict. And as for time wise, I think it will compost within a 3 to 6 month period. I don't quote me on that, but yeah, because I was like reading an article online, and they were like using a similar bioplastic as we do, and they by estimate like their product will compost in that rate. But I don't know, maybe ours will compost faster or less in less time. Yeah.
That's great. And I think it would I would love to see you continue this work and see how this can scale, and if it could become a mass product for people to use.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
We have about 1 minute left. Ryan, did you want to add anything?
Great project. Awesome. I really love these types of things. I guess I'll just give you a piece of food for thought, which is, this just got me thinking about the greater system and how you would implement it into a wider system. And I was wondering if you did do any research, like, and discuss it, like go go out to waste management systems and have conversations with these people, because I think you could probably gain a lot of that, a lot of knowledge from that. But the main thing that popped in my head was sort of like micro waste management. Like it's like, is the idea to like allow people to like improve ways that they can compost themselves and not put stuff in landfills and use their own land to do that. And then also the material, it would be really interesting to know whether or not you could think of adding something in the material that enhances your ability to grow food, or, you know, something like that, like if you're actually using composting. So I was wondering, just in the greater system, what did you do any research? Did you think about how it could be implemented in different ways and promote different ideas around?
Well, I guess like what you said just now, like
That wasn't a minute long question, sorry.
No, it's fine. I guess I'll answer part of it. So as for the idea that you just mentioned, like letting more people do more compost by themselves, that was definitely part of the general goal that I'm aiming for. Is that it would be great if people can just like compost their waste in their backyard instead of like sending them over to a large waste management place. And as for I think you were saying that was
the material.
The other, like, would I add anything to the material like to help compost? Well, I guess there was one point when I was like talking to Jim Husberg, or was it someone else? I don't know. Anyway, I was talking to someone and we thought it would be kind of cool to put like seeds in the material just so like things will sprout out. But as for what can we add to the material to make it compost even faster, I don't have like a answer for now, but maybe I'll figure it out later on. Thank you for the question.
Great job.
Great job, Sean. Thank you so much. So next up we have Sad Lamp, the happier solution. And Katie, you can go ahead and take over screen.
All right. To share this. Everyone can see this?
It's working, Okay,
there we go. My tablet is struggling to use two programs at once. Right. We are good now? All right. And I'm Katie. I have decided to create a sad lamp as my project. So we'll start out with what is SAD. It's actually seasonal affective disorder. It's a type of depression that occurs mostly in the winter months when people don't get enough sunlight. It includes general depression symptoms like fatigue, social withdrawal, hopelessness, and can be treated, or at least the symptoms can be treated with light therapy. So SAD lights do already exist. They are out on the market and they mimic the sun at noon. That is the main goal. The light temperature has to be 5,600 Kelvin. It's pure white light. And the lux reached up to 10,000. That's just the general specs of what an SAD light does to achieve it. And here we have some examples, but I was looking at all of these and they're all rather generic in form. Even the one with the L background here is part of a company named Circadian Optics. They create more aesthetic SAD lamps, but they're still very plain and rather medical in form. So my goal was to address the experience portion of this, make a lamp that is more sculptural, more visually dynamic, and less medical in nature. This led me to the form of a jellyfish. And this is where we ended up. I combined the design for my lamp with that of a desk lamp. So you can see it's 3 stages here. On the left, it's completely off. In the middle, it is only the desk lamp being used. And all the way on the right, we have the desk lamp and the SAD light, which are the little bulbs turned on. This process began with sketches, a little bit of user testing for the base controls and what icons were needed. as well as measuring the light output of super bright white LEDs to see how many of them I would end up needing to create the SAD lamp. The electrical engineering department at CU was nice enough to let me borrow a digital light meter, and I was able to do some calculations and find out that I needed 66 lights minimum. Next came the fabrication, mostly. What you see here are the lights being cast in resin over on the left. On the right, generally we have me experimenting with the bell form. This process went on for a while. So the blue is a silicone rubber mold. So I took some bowls I found at Target, cast the rubber on top of them, and then used that to create the resin mold. And all at the same time, I was working with Tim May and Mary West to create this circuit that I would eventually end up implementing as the lamp, and started purchasing parts. Like I said, this process went on for a while. I was speaking with Melissa Felderman. She was my mentor for this as well. And she was the one that suggested casting the LEDs in resin in the first place, so that I don't just have exposed electronics. And with that in mind, I also decided to bead the wire. So I knew these were going to be hanging out in the open, and I wanted to present that a little better. And I was messing with the form. You can see this clear piece was more flat in nature, and I decided to make it more vertical, and at the same time began laser cutting the pieces for the base. Once my electronics started arriving, I was able to work with that, started machining the arm of the lamp and laser cutting in acrylic the base. We can see here that I'm running just a regular light cord, socket cord. You can buy these off Amazon for your house, and then start jumping off of it with this guy. This is what's doing most of the heavy lifting here, this white brick. It's called a power switch. And it's a little difficult to see, but is connected to the terminal block here. And we're only using one power source. It's connected to the wall to power both of these lights. So the big one here is just the classic LED light bulb. And here, the little one is one of the indication lights that would later go in these 4 little holes. This guy was mostly in control of making sure that only 5 volts got to the rest of my electronics instead of overloading everything. So it's sending 5 volts to the microcontroller, to these LEDs, and eventually would be sending it to the 72 LEDs that I ended up using for the SAD portion. The process began with a lot of testing. I was told to test incrementally, so I did my best to do it piece by piece. Here you can see I was testing the individual super bright white lights, trying to build up and make sure that I could reach 70 without blowing anything up. And I began soldering some of the base electronics to proto board. This is where it got a little trickier. Here you can see the power and ground wires, that's what these 2 are, coming out of the lamp. And that is where my lights would begin jumping off of. Because this project was concerned with the brightness of the lights, I had to wire them all in parallel. So that's 2 connections for every little light bulb soldered together. Plus, as per the suggestion of Mary West, they each have their own individual resistor. So in total, this ended up having over 250 soldering connections, over 300 in the entire project, and it took about 11 hours to put it all together. That included stripping the wires and creating that, and then also testing them incrementally. I decided to go about this so I didn't go insane by organizing them in this little ring you can see here. I decided to do groups of the LEDs of either 3 or 4 and test them each, and then test them with the group. So every time I added one, I would go back, test, and make sure it worked and didn't blow up. Incremented through this, wash, rinse, repeat 20 times for each of these. You end up with this big mess of wires that sits nicely under the bell. As for the rest of the electronics, they fit nicely into the base. And that's where we are. Any
Nice
questions?
work. Thank you. Fun, Katie. So, Asla, Ryan, would either one of you like to start?
I can start. Well, congratulations, first of all. And I have one of those Samsung sun lamps. So I know the pain. They're so ugly, and you know, when I was buying it, I wanted to find something like better looking, and like, just couldn't find it. So I just settled for it, and I love it. It just wakes me up great. So I'm glad someone is like onto this problem, and I love your final result. I have two questions. One is about, you said you did some user testing, and I'd love to hear a bit more about that. And one other thing is like one of the, like when I was looking into these sun lamps, I really like one of the biggest criteria aside from like how they looked was like their functionality. So some of them had like 3 ringtones or like, you know, birds and waves and something else, and some of them only had one. Some of them you could hook up your phone. Some of them had radios. So did you think about the digital interface a little bit and like what kind of functionality you want this lamp to have? And I realize you've done the hard part, and that's sort of more like the, you know, the other functionality. You've done like the biggest part of the lamp, but like I'm curious to know if you thought about any of those when looking at these products.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of options when I was first deciding on what form to pick and deciding whether it should be used as a lamp to wake you up and should turn on gradually or all at once in all these different settings. I did end up choosing to go with the same settings that my personal SAD lamp has because I found that very useful. It has 15, 30, 45-minute settings and also hold, so it just stays on. And I began by sketching this design actually on a piece of paper, took it to a few people and was like, hey, if you wanted to turn on the lamp, what would you do? And I got the feedback that they needed to have these icons so that they knew which is which, but generally the feedback loop with a lamp is fairly strong. And when you turn on the switch, you see what happens.
Yeah. Great work. Great.
Thank you.
Ryan, go ahead.
Great work. I love this idea. I'm from California originally, and I live in New York, so it's nice to like. I actually do get seasonal affective disorder here because I love the sun. So I love that. I love this project. I love the idea. I love the way to like sort of take form, dehumanize, like change the tone of like a more medically feeling sort of product. I just have one question. Did you ever think about playing, and this is in regards to form, do you ever think about playing with texture? Like something soft you could hug or like hang around? Did that ever come into your design process at all? Because I've never seen a lamp like that, and I thought it would be nice to have like a pillow light.
Yeah, that using a pillow would be out of my range of capability at this point for fabrication, but there was a lot of exploration. I went through looking at different forms. I ended up settling on white because it had ended up all being white, but I looked at different colors and different functionalities it could have. There was a long process that it went through. Like I considered tree form and a whole bunch of other things, but the jellyfish I thought was the most organic, recognizable, and calming design.
Cool.
Nice work, Katie. Thank you so much. Well done. So next up, we have self-portrait. So Sophie, Divya, and Summer, you guys can go ahead and take over the screen.
Thanks.
Can you see that fine?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. So we're self-portrait. I'm Divya Bandretti.
I'm Sophie Adams.
And I'm Summer Thompson.
So self-portrait is a fashion-focused denim jacket that uses color-changing pigment and fiber optics to dynamically change the design while being worn. The intent behind our project was as the technology and fashion industries converge, we see a gap of fashion-focused wearable tech in everyday wear, instead of focus on data-driven devices like Fitbit or the Apple Watch. Wearable tech currently is only seen in high fashion, so through Self-Portrait, we hope to bridge this gap by creating 3 fashionable denim jackets that integrate technology into its aesthetics. Self-Portrait uses LEDs, fiber optics, and color-changing pigments to create an always-changing wearable garment.
So before we got started on our final jacket, we did some research and referenced these 2 jackets that you see here. The jacket on the left was created by Mary West, who is a PhD student in the Atlas department. She created this jacket using a pre-existing leather jacket and implemented LED design on the back that was sound responsive. So having already done a project very similar to what our capstone project was, she was a really great reference to help us figure out how to implement our own electronics onto our jackets, and also how to make our jackets look as professional and as polished as possible. The jackets that you see on the right-hand side were created by the company Neon Muse, and they make jackets using EL wire for raves. So we looked into using EL wire because of what they do, and we decided against it because we found out that EL wires are very bulky. They buzz when they turn on. They they take a lot of power, and they can only turn on and off, and we wanted our jackets to be more dynamic than this. Before we got started again on our final projects, we had to prototype some different aspects of our design. So this included testing color changing pigments, fiber optics, and incorporating our electronics into our garments.
So at the beginning of this process, we knew we wanted to include some kind of color changing element that wasn't LED or a light. And so we've ordered some UV triggered pigments that will change to color when exposed to the sun, along with glow in the dark pigments that charge and glow when exposed. After testing different ways of applying these pigments to our jacket and to textile, we decided that painting them on would be the best way. So we made fabric paint with the pigments by mixing them with fabric medium and acrylic base. We then set the paint using a hot iron so that the fabric paint would withstand wash and wear. A challenge working with painting on textiles was the fibers of the textile embedding in the paint layers and being visible on the surface of the design. We found that creating perfectly painted patches took a lot of time and effort just to remove these fibers and create a really clean patch. So secondly, we wanted to incorporate LEDs and illumination. So we decided to work with fiber optics, which are small diameter, long nylon threads, which can be stitched through and stitched on to our various designs. We found the best way to illuminate these was to attach both ends of the fiber optic to a light source. When this is done and the fiber is not bent, the whole strand will glow. A challenge with this and working with these with fiber optics was their sensitivity to heat. And this required extra precautions when attaching our LEDs to the fiber optics using heat shrink. However, using lots of precaution and lots of layers of heat shrink, the resulting component was extremely low profile and easy to hide within the jacket. Finally, we chose to work with an Arduino LilyPad microcontroller and a small rechargeable LiPo battery. This allowed us to hide all of our electronics within the structure of our respective jackets. We also used sewable LEDs, conductive thread, silicon wire, jewelry hardware, and sewable snaps to assemble our circuits. Once these circuits were added, components were stitched down to prevent them from getting caught and torn while being worn. The snaps were also really great for connecting our circuits because they allowed for convenient removal or reconfiguration so the jacket could be washed.
So after doing this research and these prototypes, we were able to create our final jackets, the first of which you'll see is mine. So the theme of my jacket is the solar system. I love astronomy and I work at the planetarium, so it's a huge part of my life. This is my self-expression. But also we were created through the solar system, so I feel like it is the truest form of self-expression for all of us. The jacket that you see here was thrifted from Buffalo Exchange in Boulder. And I chose this specific jacket because I felt like it was very on brand for my personal style, my fashion style. And I worked with the length of the jacket to create this final planetary design that you see here. My jacket has 4 different looks to it that you see side by side on the bottom. The far left being just ambient indoor lighting, all the planets appear white. If you take the jacket out in the sun, the planets' UV pigment, they change colors to be their respective colors. If the jacket is charged in sunlight and you view the jacket either in a dark room or at night, all the planets glow in the dark from pigment painted on top of the UV pigment. And my favorite look is the party look, which is created from hand-stitched fiber optic bunches stitched around the circumference of each planet that glow their kind of planetary theme color. And these LEDs have a breathing pattern to them, so they get brighter and dimmer every few seconds to create a more dynamic look. The rings of Saturn that you see are actually connected to RGB LEDs, which cycle through the colors of the rainbow, so it creates even more movement to the back of the jacket. All of my electronics are housed on the inside back of the jacket, so I covered the back in this fabric that you see that's easily removable to access the electronics. The wires are fed through the seam in the jacket on the inside to the front left pocket where the microcontroller and battery are held to easily access the on-off button for the LEDs. Next, you can see these beads that I stitched on, and these are to represent the asteroid belt that's located between Jupiter and Mars. And every bead and every planet patch is hand-stitched onto my jacket.
My jacket's design was inspired by a popular trend on Pinterest where people cut out areas on a denim jacket and replaced it with a patterned fabric. To make the design more personal, I picked a fabric I thought reflected my style best. I also incorporated a bear patch on the front pocket because I wear a bear necklace every day I consider lucky. There are also flower patches on the back along with the bear patch on the front. They were made with a photochromic pigment, so they change from white to color when exposed to UV light. The floral mesh panels located on the back and shoulders contain sewable LEDs behind some of the flowers. Those LEDs are programmed to twinkle at different rates, while the stems of the flowers are lined with fiber optics to make them glow. I try to incorporate these electronics in a way that didn't take away from the original beauty of the embroidery. I sewed the LEDs in with conductive thread in a way that it would blend into the embroidery pattern. I also chose to use the thin fiber optics so that they would be less visible. The inside of the jacket is lined with a flannel backing held in with snaps, which are also the connections. So this allows the backing to be removed as long as with the electronics so that you can clean it easily. And the microcontroller and the battery are held in the pocket on the inside, and those are also removable, and the battery is rechargeable through the microcontroller.
My jacket, excuse me, my jacket was inspired by celestial bodies and created using a sashiko embroidery technique, which is a traditional Japanese way of frequently used on repairing denim. The center circle represents the sun and the moon, and it is complemented by 2 handmade star patches. I first painted the center circle with yellow and orange UV pigments, then embroidered fiber optics onto the circle to create an illuminated crescent when turned on. I created the stars with blue UV painted canvas, then embroidered the star design with a darker blue thread onto that canvas. I cut them out and mounted them with felt. And then below where I wanted to put them, I added UV and a white LED and the felt worked to diffuse the light beneath the patch. So it would create more of a glowing patch than a bright LED point. The LEDs flicker and fade, which create movement on the back of the jacket between the 2 stars. And the patches are also painted with glow-in-the-dark pigment, which show the shapes after being charged in the sun. And finally, I just wanted to include this last patch, which I am just mounting onto felt, which is my tribute to the time I've spent in this program. And yeah, I think it'll be a nice final touch. And so finally, we'd like to say a special thanks to Mary West, Melissa Feldman, and Nikki Britt for their help and support during this process. Thank you all for listening. We welcome any questions you have.
And Divya, if you just want to stop sharing your screen so we can see everyone.
Nice work, guys. Thank you. Well done. Ryan, also, do either of you want to go first? Ryan, you're already unmuted. Do you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I like this. I like this. I love the self-expression it made. A couple ideas came up, but I also like the focus on like sort of one material, like just denim. And I think there's some advantages to that because it's a material that has like a little more weight, so it's a little easier to conceal electronics and put things in. Whereas like if you use silk or something like that, it'd probably be like pretty hard to get all those wires and make the clothing feel comfortable. I also love the whole concept around how like everything with wearable technology is either like Burning Man or like high fashion, so I thought that was a really cool cool approach. And the whole pigment idea I think gives a lot of like organicness to the product and feel. What just kept on popping up in my mind is it seemed you had like one consistent element, which was sort of like lighted patches that you would put on the thing. Have you guys, I didn't hear anything about, do you guys think about creating this into like a larger platform where people can create their own designs and create their own things on top of what you have, and do the self-expression thing, but choose their own patches or design their own patches? Because I think you could create a very modular system like that and do that. Did that ever cross your guys' minds?
It never crossed our mind, but that's a really great idea. I like taking the project in that direction.
Yeah, I think we approached it as more of like a craft and like creating things by hand that kind of expressed our own like individual traits and personalities. So definitely taking it to more of like a commercial production stage is something that we hadn't quite thought about, but would be next steps for sure.
Cool.
Also, did you want to join in? Yes, I love them. I want one. One question, is it weather resistant? So if it was raining or you're in the dust and Burning Man, so does it hold? So I was thinking about that while I was seeing it, and yes. And then my other question is, where can I get one?
Yes, the photochromatic paints and all of the paints are weather resistant. They're sealed so that they can be washed. The only thing that may have issues would be the 3mm LEDs that are attached to the fiber optics in the back. They're all soldered and sewn down, but so it would probably be fine for like probably 4 or 5 washes, but it might be a good idea to remove the LEDs before washing it.
I think your comments about it raining, I don't think we brought that into play when we were planning. I feel like that was a little bit out of scope for us. We were just trying to get the fabrication of it, and that's definitely a next step, but I don't think our jackets could sustain like pouring rain, and the electric will be fine.
And a lot of
go ahead, please.
A lot of the sewable materials are made to be washed a couple times, so it could take some water.
Yeah. Okay. And I love how you the 3 of you came together and worked together, and then I was expecting one jacket, and I love how you all have a jacket that really expresses you. How did that process play out? Like, how did you decide to work on this project together, and like you're collaborating, but then also you have your own individual projects, which I thought was super cool. Can you tell us a little bit about the collaboration?
I think it kind of started from we were trying to plan one jacket, and then we were talking about adding different pieces, and I feel like our views on what we wanted were very different, and we were like, we could just make all our own jackets and get really into the creative pieces and have ownership over one thing, but able to help each other in each process. So we did start with one jacket and then went from there, and having the self-portrait be each of our self-portraits.
We also kept a lot of what we use similar, like we all use the photochromic paint, we used fiber optics and LEDs just so we could prototype together and figure out how to use them best so we could just apply it to our own jacket.
And I think
congratulations.
Thank you. I was just going to say our skill sets were very varied, so there were different things that each of us could contribute and help each other learn how to do, and that was also very helpful.
Great.
So nice work, you guys. Well done. Thank you so much. So next up, we have Touch the World. Kenny, you can go ahead and take over the screen.
Wonderful. Can everyone see this? Just want to get some confirmation here.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, my name is Kenny Cox, and my project is Touch the World. Touch the World is all about improving geography education by taking design aspects from the blind and accessibility community in order to create an interactive, tactile regional map. But why am I doing this project? Well, according to surveys that I've done on experts in the educational field, children are taught geography in regions. The reason why it's taught in regions, it allows students to compartmentalize information based off of similar society, political boundaries, and culture within a confined region to make more meaning and sense of that region. My project supports both auditory, kinesthetic, and visual learning styles, as it has physical sensations, pronunciations, and you can feel the textures of the terrain. And of course, most importantly, there are very few existing tools for blind geography education. My project has a large interactive space that is 3.5 inches wide with a length of 14.25 inches, which includes my touchable typography system and has gotten certified country pronunciations. So when making this project, I needed to ask myself a few questions. Which region should I focus? How will I get this terrain information? How will I make these terrain buttons? And how will I overcome the limitations of my Arduino? Well, first I decided to choose East Asia as the region that I wanted to pick because it has an enormous variety of different kinds of geological features, as you can see here on this map. And this is not even, I used 5 different maps and Frankenstein them all together just to get the kind of map that I wanted to make. But where did I get this information? I got this information from the shuttle radar typography mission in the 2000s. This is an open source typography terrain information. And as you can see on the map on the left, everything the gray touches, I have information on, which is pretty much the whole world. Sorry, Greenland. So what I did is that I had to convert this 3-dimensional data and curate the map. I did this by splicing it up in a computer-aided design program called Fusion 360. I had to exaggerate the z-axis so that you can tell and feel the different bumps in the terrain and understand the different parts and regions that I wanted to divide, as you can see on the right side. Once I have the different regions planned out and cutted, I needed to 3D print them. And I did that by purchasing my own 3D printer and made them piece by piece. Each of these pieces took about 9 to 13 hours to print. And I have 14 different regions, so that took a very long time. And that doesn't even include all the other mishaps and mistakes that I made. Feel free to ask me about those later. Something that I also had to overcome is that because I had 14 regions, and as you can see up here, I have so many buttons and not enough digital pins. So how did I solve all these problems? Well, I transferred my buttons from being digital on-off to analog. By having the buttons be analog and using a voltage divider circuit, I can instead have each button underneath each terrain type have its own unique voltage input. This unique ID would allow the Arduino in my project to sense which button was pressed and to trigger the audio of the pronunciation. And of course, this is my final product. It is a lovely thing, and let me show you. Can you guys still see the video and stuff? Okay, perfect. 1 second, just gotta make sure everything's good.
This is Touch the World. Touch the World is a tool to improve geography education by incorporating visual, kinesthetic, and auditory stimulus for students. This project utilizes my touchable typography system that incorporates tactile terrain, distinct geographic features, and pronunciations. But to make it work, you first have to plug this in. Okie dokie. Southern Hills. Yunnan Guizhou Plateau, Sichuan Basin, the Tibetan Plateau, Loess Plateau, the Gobi Desert, the Great Eastern Stekhingan Mountain Range, the Manchurian Plain, the Korean Peninsula, the Yellow Sea, the Sea of Japan, East China Sea. Wonderful. The touchable typography system has the ability to expand as a product by focusing on other regions and displaying other types of data, such as a heat map, perhaps, as a physical, interactive experience.
Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for Kenny. So Asa, Ryan, which one of you would like to go first? Okay, go ahead.
Go for it.
Hi, a great project, congratulations. Of course, I have to ask you about the mishaps because you told us to ask, so I'm going to ask you about those. And I also want to know if you've done any testing or any stakeholder interviews to sort of understand the needs of your target group, because it seems to be very specific. And if you talk to any of them to see if this is useful for
Yes.
people who have that issue.
Yes, thank you so much. So one of the many issues that I came into is that not only is this a physical product that heavily relies on the fabrication method of these 3D printed terrain tiles, I lost access to a 3D printer due to COVID, and I lost access to interacting with the Colorado Springs School for the Blind and Disabled. I was hoping to interact more with the principal, ask for more surveys and feedback and incorporate that more into my project, but I was not able to due to these recent events. I wanted to, and I planned for that, but things got in the way.
Got it.
Because I lost access to 3D printing and laser cutting and all these wonderful tools, I had to use a cheap 3D printer. I had to troubleshoot warping. I had to troubleshoot bed adhesion, and all these 3D prints were really bad initially, and I wasted a lot of time. So
I can imagine.
I am very proud and excited to show off my project, regardless of all the obstacles.
And I think, you still have a working project, so you should be proud. I think hopefully when this is all over and we can go out, I think it would be great if you could go back to that community and, do get that feedback, and maybe they can use the tool and you can put it in the school,
That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Well, congratulations.
Ryan, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'll throw in a quick question. I really like the project a lot. I think it's awesome. I love the whole idea around the tactile. Like, I would actually prefer a map like that too. The tactile feel of areas and stuff like that. And one of the things that popped in my mind was that you have this audio component. And I was wondering if you thought about making that audio component more complex. You have the pronunciation of the names, but maybe there's like sound, like environmental sounds of that area. Maybe there's multiple buttons you can press on things. There's like 5 buttons that are like exactly the same. I was wondering, did you play with that? I know it's just a prototype and you're going through, but that was the other part of the experience, because you probably nailed the physical tactile thing.
Yes, that is a great question. And I did consider all those things. Initially, I wanted to incorporate gamification in learning, as both humor and playing games and memory is a great way to learn things. So I wanted to initially have a game of find that region and press a country region button and it tells you a cool fact about it, or in your case, different sound effects. And I really wanted to do that, but due to the constraints and the difficulties, I was not able to do so. But I do have the framework. Everything is ready to go if I wanted to implement such a feature.
Awesome. Great work. Looks great.
Thank you so very much.
Nice work, Kenny. Thank you so much. Yet another example of a project that I haven't seen since last semester, so congratulations. Very excited about it. So next up, we have empathetic design and pediatric anesthesiology. And Max, you can go ahead and take over.
Hello, my name is Max Bublitz, and for my capstone project, I wanted to apply empathetic design to pediatric anesthesiology. Children are administered anesthesia through inhalation induction, which avoids the use of an IV, which is very stressful for children. But it does involve the child putting on a mask and breathing for 30 or 40 seconds, which is something that children aren't very fond of doing. Children aren't very fond of getting an MRI scan either. In order for the scan to be successful, the patient has to lie completely still in a narrow tube for more than 30 minutes. On the right is an MRI machine designed by Doug Dietz specifically for children. And what he did is he created this playful environment around the machine and incorporated that machine into the environment. 80% of children have to be sedated when using a normal MRI machine to obtain a successful scan. But with the machines Doug designed, the sedation rate is less than 2%. The goal of my project was to apply a similar design approach to pediatric anesthesiology. First, I looked into the current methods that anesthesiologists use to lower anxiety in children. One method is to allow the children to watch a movie or play a game on an iPad. Another is to modify the mask to make it look less intimidating. And the third is storytelling. Let's say you find out the child likes outer space. You could tell them that there's an invading alien army coming to take over the world. It's up to them to stop them. But in order to do that, you have to put on this mask to breathe in outer space first, and then you create a whole story from there. And all of these methods find occasional success, but overall it's still extremely difficult to get the child to put on the mask and breathe. And the goal of my project initially was just to create this interactive experience where breathing triggers some sort of animation on a screen, like a picture being colored in. After learning about these other strategies, though, I realized that there was more that could be done. And what I really wanted to do was combine these three strategies into one interactive experience. I wanted to design an experience that featured direct, obvious feedback, a cohesive theme or story, a mask that related to this theme, and multiple levels or different interactions to keep the child engaged throughout the whole experience. The first of these I addressed was the theme, and this is because this really taps into the child's imagination and creativity, and that's what made Doug's design so successful. I thought an underwater theme made the most sense. The child's already putting on a mask, and you could tell them that it's an underwater game and this mask allows you to breathe underwater. And I also just thought the shape of the mask looked like a fish. And it turns out you can turn the mask into a somewhat convincing fish. These are two early mask prototypes. And this is the first level I designed for the game. A fish swims along the base of the ocean. It reaches a ledge and you have to blow it to the top with bubbles. I designed this level and one more using P5 and Arduino. And I was using keyboard events to trigger all these animations. And eventually I started substituting in respiration for the keyboard events. Measuring respiration was definitely the most difficult part of this project. Initially, I was using an air quality sensor to detect changes in carbon dioxide, but the sensor was pretty faulty and it was useless under the presence of anesthetic gas because it recognized this gas as carbon dioxide. I explored other methods to measure respiration and ended up choosing temperature. This sensor was awesome. The one drawback is it has to be very close to the mouth to consistently detect changes in breathing. The board I ended up using for this project was the SparkFun Pro Micro 3.3 volts. It was very small, and it allows me to design a small enclosure for the sensor. This is the first enclosure prototype I made from laser cutting cardboard and 3D printing 2 joints to hold the mask and the hose that administers the anesthetic gases. For the final enclosure, I used the Grasshopper plugin in Rhino to create this 4-piece enclosure that can easily be assembled and taken apart to clean between patients. Here's a video of that enclosure without the top piece so you can see the sensor inside. And for the mask design, the design had to be mostly transparent, and it also had to be one solid sheet of material for safety reasons. So I laser cut a stencil, and I used that to cut out these foam sheets to make the fish design. And there again is just the main body of the enclosure with the sensor inside. Unfortunately, I never was able to test this project with children. I was scheduled to do so after spring break, but at an elementary school, but all schools got canceled. But I do have a video showing what I planned on this to look like when it was implemented at a hospital.
The whole experience starts right when the doctor meets the child. They will greet them as usual and give them a few masks to choose from. Once the child is back in the operating room, they are told that they can play a game, but that they'll need to put on a mask to breathe underwater to play. After each level is completed, a blank screen will appear, and the doctors will tell the child how to interact with the next level.
Those are the first 2 levels of the game. And one important thing to note there is giving the child a choice between a few different masks at the beginning of the experience should give them a sense of control and make them less stressed out as they go back to the operating room. This next video shows the other 2 levels I designed for the game. So those are the 4 levels in total. To get through all of them, it takes 40 or 50 seconds, which should be enough time for the child to fall asleep. The coronavirus did pose a lot of problems for this project, and it's not where I wanted it to be at the end of the semester, but I do want to continue working on it after college. Going forward, I want to design a better enclosure, one that completely houses the sensor and the board so there's no exposed wires. I want to create a wireless connection between the board and monitor. This is something I worked a lot on. I was using Wi-Fi. I just couldn't get the results to work in real time. And I also want to do user tests with children outside of a medical setting to see how it engages children when they aren't in a stressful situation. And finally, I want to user test this at Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children. Before I end, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who helped me with this project. I got to work with some amazing people, and it was a great experience. Thank you.
Nice work. Thank you so much, Max. Ryan, I'd love to hear from you.
This is a great project. I really like it. I think that a lot of thought went into it. Like from the safety, to the cleaning, to the multiple masks. I love that the key component of the control of the game is what the kids have to be doing, which is, breathing, and breathing in a calm fashion. Did you mess with the mechanics of the game at all to is there a specific rate that they need to breathe at, or is it just like calm breathing? Did you think about that control and taking that control, mimicking the actual interaction that would be ideal for the physician to have the child do?
I did think about that a lot, and I talked to pediatric anesthesiologists, and they basically told me that the children are just going to breathe how they want to breathe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering that.
To encourage calm, steady breathing, but we'll see what they do when the game's introduced. But I really have no idea what their reactions will be.
And then in your research, I mean, I imagine there's lots of child anesthesiology departments, like at least across the country in the U.S. Was there any particular department that does like extraordinary things? Like, the Mayo Clinic does lots of things like this. Kaiser does some things like this. Did any organization pop out in your mind?
Yeah, it's an organization that isn't necessarily affiliated with anesthesiologists, but it's child. And Corey Parr helped me a lot. She works there, and the role of people in child life is they're employed at hospitals, and their sole role is to reduce the anxiety in children. So hopefully I could work with them, and when I implement this project, they could sort of be there to guide the child through along with the anesthesiologist.
Awesome. Yeah, great work. It really is a thoughtful project.
And Aslo, do you want to add anything?
I'll just quickly go. I love the project. I think it's incredible you're doing this. I did, as I was listening, I was thinking, what made you interested in such a specific issue? And I think it would be very powerful to hear when you're pitching this, and I think this should definitely become like a real project in the real world. It's super useful. So yeah, I was just thinking about that, and I had questions, like I was going to ask about the game. Ryan asked about that, and I also was going to ask who you spoke to, but you clarified those in your answers. So amazing work.
Thank you.
So nice work. Well done, Max. Thank you so much. Next up, we have future motion. So Tristan and Xander, do you guys want to go ahead and take over?
Yeah. You ready, Xander?
Yes, I am ready. Hello, everyone.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tristan Hanna.
And I am Xander Nelson. Our capstone project this year is called Future Motion. Future Motion is a vehicle interface emulator that uses gesture controls and steering wheel buttons to interact with the vehicle's interface. While developing Future Motion, we kept in mind the safety of current vehicle interfaces. Many current vehicle interfaces are often very cluttered. There's just so many things going on with them. It takes quite a bit of time to complete the task that you're trying to complete. This causes drivers while driving to be distracted. They take their eyes off the road, and they spend more time looking at the screen trying to do things like change the temperature or adjust their music, adjust navigation. While we were developing it, we were asking ourselves, is there a way that we can find a new and innovative way to interact with a vehicle dashboard while driving and maintaining proper levels of safety? So here are a couple projects and products that are already being developed, that are already being implemented. BMW is a good example. They have implemented some gesture controls within many of their vehicles, but they did combine it with a touch interface. uSense Incorporated is another good example, and they're more similar to what Future Motion was looking to accomplish because they are strictly gesture-based, but they are only sold as a product suite, and like Future Motion, they're still being developed. That technology is still in the works. So here are a couple key differences between Future Motion and what's already out there and what's being developed by others. Looking at the scope of things, rather than just featuring optional gesture controls for a few functions, our gesture controls are meant to replace all buttons in the navigation and entertainment interface of a vehicle. Looking at the purpose, while other gesture controls are meant to add extra features and strengthen the user experience, ours is meant to improve the safety of the driving experience and just, keep it simple all around, have nothing confusing on that interface.
So we started off our prototyping by connecting to a Leap motion controller. And the Leap controller tracks various hand motion data and has a JavaScript API. So we were able to make some simple web page manipulations with that data. It supplies like the palm velocity, the palm XYZ position, and there's like at least 20 more things it tracks too. Then we started the process of building future motion by building out the digital interface before we made anything physical. We wanted to be sure that we could pause the Leap controller and manipulate different components with the same gestures, which not only helps us reuse gestures, but allows the user to stay familiar with the gestures across the whole interface. We started building the actual enclosure by just sketching it out. Then we had a skeleton made, and we started testing out different positions of the Leap, which can be seen by the Velcro to determine which height was best for it. After that, we got our steering wheel, the buttons for our steering wheel, and our screen. We implemented the buttons. We got our screen into the enclosure. And then we put it all together. Then we have our final product. The interface consists of 4 components that are accessed by the steering wheel buttons. And these are nav, climate, music, and settings. And then we finally painted the front black and wrapped the back in fake leather vinyl.
Yeah, and so here we can see the final working product. You can see a user can access each page through a click of a button on the wheel. This is the map component where you can adjust it just by a simple hand placement. This would be something like temperature, adjusting the fan speed, maybe increasing the temperature of inside the vehicle, or just the settings page where you can key tap into a specific component and adjust it from there, such as the brightness. Just get in there and adjust it from there. And that's future motion.
Thank you.
Nice work, guys. Thank you. Asla, Ryan, either one of you want to go first?
All right. Yes, this is great. I do have a couple of questions. I'm really interested to know how you decided on gesture as a safer way to control the vehicle. Is this an assumption you made when you were starting this project, or do you have some data that to back this up? I love the simplification of the gestures. I do think yeah, those interfaces can be quite complicated, and like, you know, it's very distracting. So I love how we simplified it to 4 things. I also I guess it's a prototype, but I would really love to see like how this evolves and how you move between controls and how you indicate you're going from from the radio to the map, and like, you know, there's a lot of details I think that needs to be hashed out in terms of you know, entering an address. Do you then do sound? Do you say the address out loud? And what happens when you make mistakes? So I think it's a super complicated and interesting project.
To the first point, I found a case study online that said that when users go to touch a touch screen on their car, or just buttons in that area that's kind of to the right, they put a little bit of torque on the steering wheel. And so not only are they not looking on the road anymore, they have to look where they place their finger on the touch screen, but they're also putting torque on the steering wheel away from it.
Yeah, so we were kind of just focused on how can we allow a user or a driver to, I mean, keep their eyes on the road and their hands on the wheel for the most amount of time possible. And so a quick glance to this screen, they can very quickly see where they're at, like what setting they're on. And then after using it for some time, they know where that motion controller would be. They can keep their eyes on the road after that quick glance and then adjust it from there.
Yeah.
Ryan, did you want to add?
Yeah, great project. I actually a little while ago I drove a Tesla for the first time, and I was kind of like blown away at how much better it was. And then I got into like a regular car, and I was like, oh my god, like this is like night and day. So I definitely think and the one thing I really liked about it was sort of like the progressive disclosure that you get from the Tesla interface, which is what you guys are talking about. It's like sort of like there's like 4 5 things that you do most of the time. You should probably be doing those like core things. So I thought that was a smart way to think about it. But one of the things that kind of struck me was, did you think about the positioning of the screen on the dashboard? Because there's actually this other product where you can like use your phone and it like projects like on top of like on your dashboard, and it's like the screen's still like over there. It's like, did you think about the modularity of that? Like, would it be something that you would imagine a car company like trying to create, or like would it be like an add-on thing, like, you know, to a car that already exists? I was wondering what your thoughts were around that.
I mean, we went through, before we encased everything, we went through several variations of screen placement.
Yeah.
But being limited in our fabrication skills, we kind of realized that, and with the limited amount of time we had, that there weren't too many options on our screen placement. But the placement of it, we definitely went through a lot of different variations on what would be the most beneficial.
Yeah, we thought about doing some kind of holographic thing on the windshield too, but we decided to just keep it simple and stick with just motion controls.
Yeah, cool. Sweet. Great work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, last but not least for this session, we have Do You Like My Hat? Campbell, you can go ahead and take over.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Campbell White, and my project is called Do You Like My Hat? So as a kid growing up near Chicago, my mom and I regularly took trips to the Art Institute of Chicago. I always enjoyed seeing the lions of Michigan Ave guard the entrance with their oxidized copper skin, and I especially enjoyed viewing my favorite painting, A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. And to me, the most interesting aspect of this painting was that it's composed entirely out of dots. But as a kid, every time I tried to touch the painting, both my mom and the security guards would take turns pulling me away. And so I felt like I was missing a tangible experience from these art pieces that I was seeing as a kid. This feeling of acrylic paint on canvas, or clay after it's been cured in an oven, or pastel chalk when it sticks to your fingers. And I noticed the disconnect between the artist and the viewer in regard to the physical materials. And because most viewers miss out on this tangible experience, I wanted my capstone project to not only encourage, but rely on users being hands-on. Which led me to building something for an audience that thrives on being hands-on, kids. I looked through popular children's authors like Dr. Seuss, P.D. Eastman, and Arnold Lobel, who's the author of Frog and Toad, to find my style. And as seen through this reoccurring dialogue, Do You Like My Hat?, I ultimately chose Go Dog Go because of its themes of connection, inclusion, acceptance. There's also a specific scene of a dog party, and I chose this scene because it doesn't matter if you're a big dog, a small dog, a fast dog, a slow dog, a black dog, a white dog. All the dogs go to the dog party. And I think this scene in particular reflects a stigma that we can see around art galleries being considered exclusive or high-end. And so my project, Do You Like My Hat?, is a large-scale interactive art piece for kids based on the book Go Dog Go, with a focus on sound, materiality, design, and encouraging users to be hands-on. So one inspirational artist that introduced me to the world of musical paintings was Denver-based artist Thomas Evans. He's been recognized by CBS, Red Bull, and the Denver Art Museum. And in 2014, he held an art exhibit titled Art in Decibels. In this exhibit, he had teamed up with a local musician, and together they created paintings that played songs. I felt very inspired by this idea and used some of the same technologies as Evans, which leads me to Bear Conductive. Bear Conductive is an electronics company that specializes in printed electronics. This image on the right is an example of a kit that they sell that utilizes their touchboard and electric paint to play sounds from a drawing of a house. I also use the same technology in a project for my object class, and so I was able to carry over my knowledge from that project to Capstone. For my installation setting, I believe my project would be best at a storytime event at a place like Barnes & Noble or the Boulder Public Library. Here, kids would listen to the story of Go Dog Go, and after storytime is over, they would be able to go and make their own stories and sounds with my project. My project's dimensions are also 60 by 45 inches, so it's fairly large and needs some space. For my process, I started with simplifying the dog scene, or the dog party scene from Go Dog Go, and created my own version in Illustrator. I then created what I call the mini project. This was just a small portion of my larger project shrunk down at a much smaller scale. And I used this mini project to make sure my Illustrator file was being designed correctly and for user testing. When user testing, I found that I first tested my mini project amongst my peers, and this was a very beneficial place to start because I was able to receive much more technical feedback from both my users and my outside advisors. I then did some testing with kids. Lennon and Lottie are two sisters, ages 3 and 6, and the most interesting feedback I got was just how interested Lottie was in the process. While Lennon's feedback involved adding Barbies, Lottie asked a lot of questions about cutting with lasers and how sound was made, and even if she could paint on it. So after user testing, I began to laser cut my design at scale. I used 1/16 inch birch wood for all of the pieces. Next, I built my enclosure so that I would be able to conceal all the electronics. I also made the enclosure so that the project could be hung on a wall. I then painted all the pieces with electric paint and glued them to the board. And finally, I programmed my touchboard, uploaded the sounds, and added the wires so everything could be connected. So this is Do You Like My Hat? It features birch wood, electric paint, cotton balls, puzzle pieces, and interactive mechanisms. And all these interactions are also based off of simple machines. Here's a quick video showing the capacitive touch and the pre-recorded sounds. The sounds vary between pre-recorded lines from the book and cartoon sound effects. Help the dog bounce on the cannon, or change the angle of the cannon, and fire. Create your own story with Do You Like My Hat? Thank you.
Nice work, Campbell. Thank you. Ryan, Asa, do either of you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, great project. That's super fun. I wish I had that when I was a kid. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the format. So you briefly talked about, that you think it should go in a public library. And that got me thinking, how would you imagine this, how would you imagine that format, expanding? In my mind, you could make a panel for a book, everyone's whoever's going to do a book, and you do these reading sessions or something like that. And each person who's writing their kid's story is yeah, I want one of those panels at my readings, so I really like that. Did you think of any other places it could go into, or any other formats it could go into, or if that format was the most desirable, why was it the most desirable? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I do believe that it's the most desirable just because it allows kids to first learn the story, the real story, as someone reads it aloud to them. And then they have the chance to kind of just go a little crazy, have some fun with this thing. But I also will say that I'm talking right now with everything that's going on about donating it to a therapeutic place for people that work with arthritis. And just as a way to, it's for kids, yes, but anybody who knows the book would love to just kind of tap around on these things, mess with these things, and using it in a place like therapy. If they can use it, I would love to have them continue use it.
Awesome. Yeah, great work, man. They really, really
Thank
is a
you.
cool project.
Asa?
Yeah, I loved it. Super creative, super fun. I mean, you mentioned a little, but I'm wondering what are next steps for you, because I think the project has a lot of potential. So did you think about what you would do next once you have a successful prototype?
Yeah, actually, so this takes me back to Lottie, the 6-year-old. She actually, her mom asked if she could put it in her room. And so that was just very, heartfelt and warm and great. So kind of, if nothing works out, I would love to give it to her. Otherwise, right now I am in the process of just thinking about donating it to this place. So.
Well, also, I mean, just mentioning that it seems like you found a user need, so you could even just custom make these for kids and like for their rooms, for their birthday parties, for book readings, for like whatever need there is. But I think it's super fun and creative.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, good luck,
Thanks,
congratulations.
Thank you. Well done. So I said this at the end of the last session, but I do want to say this again. This group of projects in particular, being physical projects, I am, and the whole faculty, we are all so proud of all of you for all of the work that you did, given the fact that you had to, really make it work at the end of the semester. So we are beyond pleased with all of the work that you did. So congratulations. Also like to say thank you again to Ryan and Asa for taking the time to join us, especially given the fact that they are on East Coast time, so it is later over there. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This was really, really fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you everyone for having us. I mean, this is super inspirational. I love the variety of projects you're working on, and I know we're going through some hard times, but this is like super uplifting and inspirational. So thank you for having us.
So we'll do one more round of applause for everyone. Thank you guys so much. Well done. So proud of all of you. So our next session is going to start at 7 o'clock our time. So that means we have a 30-minute break within our 12-hour day. Can we believe it? It's amazing. So great job again, everyone. Thank you so much. And again, Ryan and Asa, thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you guys. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Well done.